Welcome back to Truth Talk. I'm excited to explore an idea today that is a bit interesting to me because it is so cross-culture and countercultural, and it is the antithesis of everything that we have been taught about leadership and about leaders for so long. And the beauty of this is it challenges existing paradigms and hopefully will give hope to people who are not, quote unquote, type A personalities. Those personalities are obviously seen as people who are, I don't know how you'd word this, innate leaders, or leadership qualities are just inherently in them. The trouble with that is that it's not always the truth. There's a lot of leaders that are not ostentatious and gregarious, and they are not just personality plus people, okay? And so this is an amazing bit of research that's been done recently, and it has really set the world on its ears about this subject. Now, most people believe that in order to be a leader, you got to be an extrovert. You've got to be a type A personality. You have to be loud. You have to be gregarious. And that's not always the case. And so I have a exciting book that I just finished. I don't know if you can see this. If you're watching this, you can see it. The name of the book is called Quiet, okay? And the author of the book is a lady named Susan Cain. And she really is, in my opinion, she really is the leader and the genius behind what is known as the quiet movement. Let me read you just the back. Forbes says this is a must-read book. Wall Street Journal says it's enlightening, a rich and intelligent book that asks one to look at what they think and ask themselves, can I be a leader even though I'm an introvert? At least 1/3 of the people we know are introverts. They're the ones who prefer listening to speaking, innovate and create, but dislike self-promotion, who favor working on their own over working in large groups. It is to introverts, Rosa Parks, Chopin, Dr. Seuss, that we owe many of the great contributions to society. In Quiet, it's the title of the book, Susan Cain argues that we dramatically undervalue introverts and show how much we lose in doing so. She charts the rise of the extrovert ideal throughout the 20th century and explores how deeply it has come to permeate our culture. She also introduces us to successful introverts, from witty, high-octane public speakers who recharge in quiet and solitude after talks, to record-breaking salesmen who quietly taps into the power of questions, passionately argued, superbly researched, and filled with indelible stories of real people. Quiet has the power to permanently change how we see introverts, and equally important, how they see themselves. Now, I read this book, and I had scheduled 3 days. I was going to pick it apart and read it in chunks. And I sat down and I read it in one sitting. And I'm telling you, it is a brilliantly written book. Okay. And this is a challenge for me as a leader, because you wouldn't know this, because I'm on this microphone, on this podcast, blah, blah, just prattling away and all the time. And I'm in the pulpit, but I am an introvert. And extroversion is a role that I play to the degree I need to play it. It can only be played by me to the degree that I am faithful to my core self. The reason that I can function as extroverted as I am is because there are states of deep thought, critical thought, solitude, quietness, aloneness that I recharge. And so I have always wrestled within myself, feeling like I love people. I am a people person. And if I'm around people, it happens easily for me. What they do not know is that is a scheduled event in my life. If I was like that all the time, I would become sullen, dark, drained, exhausted, emotionally tapped. You could take me into my library, lock the door, take away the key, and stick food under the door, bring me out in 30 days, and I will have been a happy man and never bored 1 second. Okay? I've never been bored alone in my life. I enjoy being alone. I'm completely happy alone. However, my calling is a relational calling. And so I am outside of my comfort zone when I'm playing the part of an extrovert, but it is what I feel called to do. Now, I have wrestled for years in my own personal life, assuming and thinking, oh, that's good coffee. Sorry. I'm sure you can hear it. And when I take a drink, and it just sounds so good, but if you could only taste it, it is wonderful. There's notes of oranges and there's notes of pomegranate with a deep chocolatey aftertaste. That's kind of like a fig. Or, yeah, my wife would say, if I wanted all that, I'd just go get a basket of fruit. But anyhow, the coffee's great. So I've wrestled with this for years. I've prayed about this. I've talked to God and said, God, am I a hypocrite? Am I a show-off? Am I somehow presenting myself in a way that's not true to who I am? I know I'm an introvert, but extroversion becomes part of what I schedule and what I do. And if I manage my life well, my inner life is happy and complete. My mind is fed by reading. My soul is ministered to by prayer and conversation with God. And my core compass is recalibrated by the systematic study of the Word of God. If all those things are right, I walk into a scheduled moment where I'm interacting with people. I'm happy. I'm at ease. I'm comfortable. And I really am truly and genuinely thankful and happy to be in the presence of people who I love. Now, this book has been a liberating thing for me. It has set me free in a way, because what it does is it balances out that I am able to be an honest, sincere, and authentic extrovert when it's scheduled to be that way, because I'm truly managing my emotions and my soul life and doing the soul work, okay? And so people who are extroverted, they need to schedule their time of introversion or quiet, or they need to be the type where they say, okay, it's not normally my thing to go sit alone for an hour and journal or contemplate or reflect. That maybe that's not them. Maybe that's not their nature, but they have to find quiet time with God. So this can apply both ways, whatever you deem yourself to be. One of the most fascinating things to me, and I preached about this one day in Calgary, and I taught on it in Little Rock a few weeks ago. Even though I didn't mention this book, I told this story. Let me read you a very brief excerpt, and then we'll talk, okay? At Harvard Business School, there are signs that something might be wrong with the leadership style that values quick, assertive, domineering, positive, loud, and extrovert answers over quiet, slow decision making. Every autumn, the incoming class participates in an elaborate role-playing game called the Subarctic Survival Situation. It is approximately 2:30 p.m. on October 5th, the students are told. And you have just crash landed in a float plane on the east shore of Laura Lake in the subarctic region of the northern Quebec-Newfoundland border. The students are divided into small groups and asked to imagine that their group has salvaged 15 items from the plane: a compass, sleeping bag, axe, and so on. Then they are told to rank them in order of importance to the group's survival. First, the students rank the items individually. Then they do so as a team. Next, they score those rankings against the experts to see how well they did. Finally, they watch a videotape of their team's discussions to see what went wrong and what went right. The point of the exercise is to teach group synergy. Successful synergy means higher ranking for the team than for its individual members. The groups with any of its members has a better ranking than the overall team, and failure is exactly what can happen when students prize assertiveness too highly. So they go down and they discuss, and it's a lengthy reading, but I'm just setting the tone for it right there. So they go down and they discuss in their minds and in their teamwork, what do we actually need? Okay, so what HBS, Harvard Business School, did is they started putting in experts, survival experts, people that were very, very gifted at knowing what to use, what to take, and what to do. Okay, be that as it may, the group began to ignore experts, and they found that even to their own hurt and even to their own damage, they listened to the person that had the loudest and most gregarious personality. And so they were following the personality and not the cues. So HBS realizes we have a problem in our development structure of our leaders, and that is that we are tuned in our society and culture to follow the best looking person. And this is nuts to me, but HBS has diagrammed and filed away the facial features of successful people down to the point to where they can tell if you are more apt to follow this person. So the experts are ignored to the hurt of the whole, and whoever it is that has the winning personality tends to have the followership. So in a culture where we're built to watch how people act, watch how people live, and watch kind of their body language and whatever it is, we're designed to follow those who are the most attractive, okay? Which gives us a real challenge because nobody is going to call Winston Churchill great looking. You know what I'm saying? He was Pug. That was his nickname with his wife. And so he's like a bulldog, right? But he's a genius in so many ways and in a wide range of his capacities. So you have to teach people in a world that is set to really pay attention to outward manifestations and outward bling. You have to teach them how to reset the core compass and respect those who are quiet. So what they started doing was working on these people in Harvard Business School and telling them, you need to learn to follow something besides just outlandish personalities or the loudest, smoothest talker, Okay. We do prize type A personalities, and we do prize those who are the most assertive. But what if the expert was quiet? What if the expert was somebody who was demure? And so it is incumbent on us as a culture, especially as a thinking culture and the church, it is incumbent on us to learn to respect those who are quiet and learn to respect quietness that produces leaders who are quiet. And so if there's anybody that's listening to this that struggles with the idea or concept of can I lead and not be an extrovert, the answer is absolutely yes. You need to become an expert in your field. Oh, you need to be seasoned. You need to have wisdom. You need to have the ability to articulate what it is you're trying to say, because at no point can we just become sloppy because we're introverts. You know what I'm saying? And this is a great balance, because eccentricity is not a turnoff to people who want to be led. But if your ideologies are sloppy, that's a turnoff to people. So let's take, for instance, nobody will argue that if you're eccentric, you can't be a leader, right? Because most great leaders I know have pretty large capacity for eccentricity, including myself. We're eccentric people that lead. We have quirks. We have all the human warps and woofs and foibles, and yet somehow we're able to grasp and harness all of that to have creativity, ingenuity, and the ability to lead. Now, we also have to take it and make sure that our introversion is not an excuse for poor articulation. Because when you need to speak up in a way that asserts your wisdom, your integrity, your value added to the conversation or the scenario of the system, in a way that fosters confidence, that people want to be led by somebody who is confident in what they know, in their skill set, even if they're not comfortable or confident in that they have a winning personality. Okay. So in the book, I don't know if you bought this book on Amazon, this one's through Crown Publishing, Random House Book Club. Anyhow, if you bought this book, the one that I bought came with this little red card in it. And it's quite a fascinating little list here. And the title of this list is, you can't see it, but it's a manifesto for introverts. And I want to talk just briefly about this. Number one, there's a word for people who are in their heads too much. You know what that word is? Thinkers. You're not some disqualified person because you contemplate and because you're reflective and you're achieving deep critical thought. Okay. Number two, solitude is a catalyst for innovation. Okay. Most of the people who are extreme publicists, or they are people who are amplifying constantly, they are salesmen, not necessarily leaders. And in our culture, we mistake what is great salesmanship for what is great leadership. Just because you can sell me something doesn't mean you're qualified to lead me. Okay? Leadership comes from when we nurture our inner core being, our core convictions, our standards, and we know who we are and we're comfortable in our own skin. When we're alone, when we're in solitude, I'm not sitting there staring at a wall. You're not sitting there just contemplating your navel all day long, right? I don't know what people are doing. But people who are true leaders and are introverts, they're using that solitude to innovate. They're using that solitude to create and leverage. Now, I'm going to get into this here in a second. They're going to use that aloneness to create togetherness. Aloneness that never produces a greater common good for the together is not a positive thing. Okay? That's called an isolationist. An introvert is somebody who manages the moments of solitude until they can translate that into moments of great productivity or content for when they are together with people. Let's take two examples of this, and they're cousins. These are brilliant cousins, like cousins on another level. It's John and Jesus. So John spends his time out in the wilderness. And nobody's going to argue that this guy's not eccentric, right? He comes out, he's got hair everywhere, and he's in, these weird clothes that are skins of animals, and he's eating locusts and honey, and he's rejecting what is formed up and produced and provided and curated, and he's living a completely God-curated life. But when he steps out onto the banks, he's not some babbling, daft human who can't get it out. He's standing on the banks and he's condemning them and telling them, repent, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. And then some of them try to come in and assimilate and sneak in. And John's like, you vipers, who warned you to flee from the wrath to come? You're just trying to get in this as a club. Man, it's so articulate. Go read John's message. Go read Matthew chapter 4. It's unbelievable what was going on here. And so John comes out and he's preaching this uber articulate message, and he's not a turnoff because he's some kind of outlier, right? I'm sorry, not John chapter 4. It's Matthew chapter 3, the preaching of John the Baptist, Matthew chapter 3. And so he's preaching, make ready the way of the Lord, make his paths straight. I am the voice of one. He knows who he is. He knows what his role is, and he knows what he's supposed to say. And forget about the garment of camel's hair. Forget about that it's all just snatched together with a leather belt around his waist. Forget that he's living off of a God-curated thing in the wilderness outside of Jerusalem. The reality is the crowd was happy to follow this man because he knew his message. Same thing about Jesus. Jesus was a man of contemplative silence. He was a man that would do great miracles, great feats, and then he would retreat to aloneness on the mountain in prayer. He spent great lengths of time in prayer. In fact, he spent the majority of his life in relative aloneness. And he wasn't brought onto the pages of history until he was nearly 30 years of age and qualified to be a rabbi. So he wasn't even playing in the system, right? Who is this who cometh, out of, can any good thing come out of Galilee? So he's coming from off the spectrum, but both of them used their moments of solitude to harness the creativity of their human spirit and God's spirit. And they came to the power of preaching and leadership. They entered into it, and their public voice elevated was purchased by their years of quiet time with God. We see the same exact thing with Paul. Paul gets saved. He does a little bit of work in Damascus and disappears for 3 years into the Arabian desert, which, and this is my opinion, I don't have proof of this, but the way that he words it, I think he was in Petra. And that's just my opinion from reading a couple books on Saul in Arabia or Paul in Arabia. So, but anyhow, the point being is that years of quietness did not produce isolation in this man. He comes out of Arabia. He said, I didn't go up to Jerusalem to find out what to say. I went alone with God. And brother, when he starts in talking, my goodness, even Peter, the rock that he was going to build the church with, even Peter, who he was going to say he was going to open the gates and have the keys to the kingdom. Even Peter said, this man speaks hard things to understand. Why? Because those years of silence had bought him an amplification in his voice. You must get comfortable being alone and quiet with God and allow the solitude to purchase the innovative or the creative or the anointed part of you. Look at Moses. Moses is expelled from the system of Egypt. He tried to be the deliverer. He was called. He had the call of God on his life. But in his attempt to prematurely deliver, he ends up killing a man. He has to run to the wilderness. It was in the years, 40 years he spent, from the age of 40 till 80, from when he killed the man in Egypt until he was sent back to deliver. But he's buying and purchasing this wherewithal to publicly produce good in his life. So that was a key takeaway from this book also, is that solitude is a strong catalyst for innovation. The other thing, I'm not going to name all these things, but there's just a couple things. In the long run, staying true to your temperament is key to finding work that matters for you. And so this is important. And being true to yourself, not saying, okay, I can't be me. Now, this is a massive difference between some grown-up 20-something-year-old sitting in his boxer shorts in his mom's basement playing games all day. Don't misconstrue stupidity for quiet. Okay, that's ignorance. That's a waste of your life. That's water spilled upon the sand that shall not be brought again. Okay, you'll never get those years back. So we're not using the embrace of introversion as some kind of excuse for isolationists. What we're saying is that if you're true to yourself and you're true to the call of God in your life, you're going to go and you're going to be alone and you're going to take care of yourself. And when you do, you're going to come out and you're going to be a stronger leader and a more innovative person. The other thing is, quiet leadership is not an oxymoron. You can be a contemplative person and still be a leader. The other thing is a lot of these leaders that are obsessed with networking and all they do is just, network. I've noticed something about introverts, that when they do come out, they come out for purpose. They're interested not in quantity, they're interested in quality. My friendships are so powerful, so strong. I'm not going to name my friends because I'm just not going to name drop, but there are men and women that are on my favorites list on my phone, that those are some of the deepest, most authentic, most transparent relationships. And what you have to learn is introverts come out for business, not business cards. I don't come out of my hole and out of my library to get likes on some dumb social media page. That's not even real life to me. It's not even a blip on my radar. But man, to sit down and have coffee and pick up with a friendship and balance each other and weigh out thought and weigh out direction and have voices in my life, my God, that's powerful. And I wouldn't trade that for the shallows and the business card portfolios and all of the social media likes in the world. I'd rather set, here's something interesting. I'm an introvert and I make no bones about it. And I'm not on the phone a lot. I turn my phone on and I start making the calls that I need to make. And when I turn it off, I'm back in the meetings I need to be, or back in the project I need to be, or the time allocation I need to be in. But one of the things about the relationships that I have learned and cultivated in my life is that I just preached for a friend of mine a couple weeks ago, and him and I had not talked in, I don't remember how long, months, let's just say months, okay? The minute we got in the room, that connection was so authentic and so real and so deep and so God designed that the both of us began to pick up immediately in a deep flow, critical thought pattern. That's the difference. Okay. Now, granted, an extrovert is going to meet more people. He's going to know more people. She's going to have more business cards. She can tell you where to get a free lunch in any city in North America that she flies into. And he can drop names like, my goodness, you'd think he was golfing with Warren Buffett last week. But I've noticed something. Those forms of extroversion, while they are far-reaching, they do not penetrate very deeply. And so if you are the quiet person, don't beat yourself up, because Carl Ballestero, I attribute this to Carl Ballestero. Thomas is producing this and he'll fact check me. Somebody may have said this, but if a man can produce 5 close friends that he does not have to work hard or have high maintenance relationship with, they're just 5 constant stars in his or her life, they are wildly successful at relationships. I know people that have stacks of contacts. We don't do Rolodex anymore. Nobody that's under 35 is even going to know what I'm talking about. But a Rolodex is all them little cards, and they used to spin them. And man, you could just, I got this many contacts. And you want to stop them and saying, how many friends do you have? And how many brothers and sisters do you have? Or do you just have contacts? Depth doesn't come through superficial, shallow contact. Depth comes from you pursuing with great levels of intentionality. Where does God want me to be? And what does he want me to do when I'm there? And so if you're the quiet person that has always discounted your ability to be developed into higher state of leadership because you are an introvert, have faith today. Have encouragement spoken into your life. You are not an isolationist, and you are not disqualified from leadership because you are quiet and you're an introvert. God can use that if you will use your solitude as a catalyst for innovation.